Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for a virtual tour of Vulcan Park and Museum. I'm Casey and I work in the education department here. I'm so excited to have you and I hope that you enjoy this introduction to our museum, which focuses on the history of the city of Birmingham and of course Vulcan himself. Today we will be learning about the creation of Vulcan and why he exists. If you have any questions, please comment below and be sure to follow us on social media for updates and info about our next episode. Thank you.
Today we're going to talk about Vulcan's conception and how he was made and why he was made. We have to go back to 1903 when the city leaders got together and they heard about this World's Fair in St. Louis, and they knew that Alabama wasn't being represented in that World's Fair. Because Birmingham was basically an iron and steel city, the city leaders got together and said, well, why don't we build a gigantic statue, send it to the World's Fair so people from around the world can see who we are. So when the city leaders hired Giuseppe Moretti to design and build the statue of Vulcan, they left it up to him to decide. They just wanted it built out of iron. Mr. Moretti chose Vulcan, the god of fire, or the god of forge. He has a hammer in his left hand and there's an anvil and he's pounding on that spear point and he's holding it up to the light to make sure he has a point. So that's what Vulcan is doing. He's making that spear and he's known as a tool maker. He was made to represent all the people in Birmingham who work directly and indirectly with the iron and steel industry. So when Mr. Moretti came to Birmingham to build the statue, he realized there wasn't a building big enough to make the mold of Vulcan out of clay. He knew of an unfinished cathedral in Passaic, New Jersey. So he called the people at the church and asked if he could rent the church to build the mold of Vulcan. The cathedral had an open space of almost 5 stories and it was not heated. So Mr. Moretti and his 12 helpers had to carve that statue out of clay in freezing temperatures. Once they got him like they wanted him, they cut him in 21 gigantic pieces. Each piece was then shipped on a rail to Birmingham, and that's where it was cast into iron. When Vulcan was at the World's Fair in St. Louis, people marveled at what they saw. He won all types of metallurgy awards, and as a result of Vulcan being at the World's Fair in St. Louis, tens of thousands of people from around the world saw that statue. So after the World's Fair was over, Vulcan was shipped back to Birmingham in pieces, obviously, and the city of Birmingham didn't have the funds to pay the freight to bring Vulcan home. So after Vulcan was lying on the side of the tracks, the city of Birmingham decided we need to put him back together. So they decided to take him to the state fairgrounds. He was only supposed to be there for a couple of years. Unfortunately, he stayed out there for over 30 years. That's when the city decided to rightfully give Vulcan his place in our city. So in 1938, they brought him back to Red Mountain and put him on the pedestal. The very iron ore that came from Red Mountain built Vulcan. So it's a tribute to have him on Red Mountain overlooking the entire city. The plan for the torch was only supposed to be about a year. However, it remained for almost 50 years. It wasn't taken down until 1999 when the statue was taken down to be refurbished. The statue of Vulcan was in bad need of repair. The city of Birmingham knew that this was a liability. Unfortunately, they didn't have the funds at the time to restore the statue, so they had to close Vulcan Park. When Vulcan was put on the pedestal in 1938, they filled him with concrete all the way to his waist. And when that concrete expanded, it started to split Vulcan at the seams. And this is where he started to crack. So the first thing we had to do, we had to take and drill all that concrete out of that statue. Then they were able to take him apart, the different pieces, and they lifted him with a crane down to the parking lot where he was resting until we got all the pieces down and before he was shipped to Robinson Iron in Silicaga. The goal of the Vulcan Park Foundation was to raise millions of dollars, not only to restore the statue to its historical significance, but to build a visitor center and a museum to tell the story about Vulcan. Today, Vulcan Park and Museum has become a world-class destination place. We have people from all over the world visiting Vulcan. Vulcan represents all the people who designed and built him, and he represents all the people in Birmingham today.